Well, good morning, everyone. I'm here with Pastor Scott. Thanks for joining us in today's devotion. You heard him on Sunday share the very challenging experience of walking through the homegoing of his wife and the lessons that he learned. And I'd like you just to talk a little bit more about it. So, when did you meet Shay?
Yeah, we met in college.
Okay.
Actually, it was April 26th, 1991. She was a freshman and I was a junior, and we met at the University Center, and actually friends set us up. They lied to us. Shay's friend said that, hey, I hear Scott's interested in you. Would you go out with him? And my friend said, oh, I heard Shay's interested in you. And I go, oh, sure. And we found out that neither one of us said that. They lied to us and set us up, and we dated 4.5 years.
Wow. Okay. And you ended up liking each other because you got married.
Oh, yeah. I knew after the second date she was the person that God had in store for me.
Wow. That's great. So when were you married?
September 16th, 1995.
Okay. All right. And then, so how many years were you married before she passed away?
We were married 22 and a half years.
22 and a half years. So tell us just a little bit about when did you find out that she was sick?
We found out October 2nd, 2017. She had a history of some issues, and we knew that there were potential surgeries that would lie ahead for her. And because of her gastrointestinal issues, she woke up with great pain one morning, and we went in and they thought, okay, this has to do with her history of illness. And they did surgery, and they said everything looked great. And then 2 days later, they came to us and said, we found stage 4 cancer when we were doing the pathology. So it was totally unexpected.
Oh. And so from that time until the time she went home to heaven, what was the time period?
She was sick for 7 months. She actually passed away on April 26th, 2018.
Wow. No, that's why you remember the date.
Yep, that's why I remember the date.
Yeah. So as she's declining, you're taking care of her. You've adopted a little girl from China, which adds a whole new, unique dynamic to the mix. What was that like? How did you weather that? Or is it a blur?
Elizabeth was 8 years old at the time, and as I mentioned on Sunday, Shay and I, we spent quite a bit of time praying together and talking together of how are we going to navigate this together, but also how are we going to help Elizabeth to just go through this time. And as I prayed, I was determined that I was going to love Elizabeth by showing her how much I loved her mom. So I was very much that idea of being a servant to Shay, and I did whatever was necessary. And over time, what from an outside looking in would seem like drudgery ended up being little moments of joy for me, because I could see how God was allowing me to spend time with Shay, to do things that were nobody would want to do, but I counted it a privilege to be able to help her as she was going through this illness. And we would share with Elizabeth some of what's going on at an age-appropriate level. We, as a family, would pray and have hope, but we also wanted to be realistic and have the idea of, well, what if? So it was one of those feet in two worlds. God, we know you can heal, but we're not sure what your perfect plan is, so help us to have faith.
And you had faith, and the Lord chose to take her home.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we decided to do is, even in the midst of the illness, that we was not going to let Elizabeth miss out on some of those things that all the kids get to enjoy, like field trips. And actually, the day that we found out that we needed to call in hospice, I had taken Elizabeth on a class trip to the zoo in Knoxville, which is 4 hours away from Nashville, where Shay was in the hospital. So I drove 2 hours to Knoxville, walked the Knoxville Zoo, and then drove back to Nashville, and we found out that it was time to be making those final preparations. And again, we saw it as at least there was that gift of time where we could think, where we could pray, where we could plan. And my goal was to help Elizabeth see what a great person her mom was, but also how much I loved her, because I'm thoroughly convinced one of the greatest gifts we as dads can give to our kids is an example of what a godly husband and wife look like and how they interact, and the good and the bad, the sacrifices and the encouraging of one another.
Yeah. And so what would you want to say to someone that's struggling with loving their wife?
Please understand the incredible gift that God has given you. The most precious commodity that God gives us is time. Money will come and go. Jobs, stuff, all that comes and goes. But we only have so much time. And if God allows us to be with the person that we love, we should invest that time with them. And it's not easy and it's frustrating at times, but it's worth every sacrifice. Thinking back, I slept 30 nights in the hospital over those 7 months because I wanted to be there so that she was not alone. And it was worth every ounce of energy that I had to invest.
Well, that is grace. You went through a funeral, and then you've been walking through grief, and now you've moved on. And is there life beyond grief?
Absolutely. Sometimes I think people make fun of what I do as far as I take Elizabeth to Disney quite a bit, but we spend a lot of family vacations at Disney. And I found that when she and I go to Disney, it gives Elizabeth a chance to remember. She can ask questions. She'll ask, what was Mommy's favorite ride? Or, do you remember when we did X, whatever that is? And it's just a time for us to remember. She's comfortable there. We can laugh and remember the good things. It gives me an opportunity to tell her about other stories about Shay and I before we had Elizabeth, because we dated 5 years before, or we waited 5 years until we got Elizabeth because we were waiting on the adoption, and just telling her what we were praying for and how we were getting prepared by God as a husband and wife for this gift that Elizabeth is. And I use the opportunity now to help remind her and encourage her and hopefully point her to be the kind of person that God's created her to be.
Well, from my perspective, from what you've shared, the grace of God taught you how to love your wife, and the grace of God continues to teach you how to love your daughter. And I believe that pleases the Lord. It does. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And Lord, thank you for this day and the grace that you give each one of us to live and to honor you, to love those you've put in our lives, and to walk through whatever difficult circumstances we may face, knowing that your grace will be sufficient. So bless us and lead us, we pray. Now offer your prayers. God bless you.